ladies and gentlemen, it's Ukraine, Russia, China show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star. Today's guests are Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Thank you. And also our man in Kiev, Ivan Kucherenko. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Glad to be here today.
Mhm. I'd like to mention that our show was selected last Friday for a repeat at Jim Peters' show. And that's quite interesting development because it seems to me that we are getting more audience as we continue our work on trying to put a spin on development of in Ukraine truthfully and objectively as much as we can. Today I was listening to Israeli war journalist, quite well known, Sergei Auslander. And he was talking about the situation in Ukraine. What he noticed is that Ukraine is getting back some of its territories. It's continued to resist all Russians' attempts to get anywhere ahead on front lines. What's interestingly Russians are doing, sometimes they are sending 2, 3 men and they're running for 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers, put Russian flags there, and then they're hiding until such time as they will be all terminated. But the Russian flags are there, so Russia now says, okay, we got ahead 15 kilometers in this direction and 20 kilometers in that direction. So now,
So basically, their advances are an illusion.
these advances are lasting about 35 to 40 minutes or so, because especially now when there is less and less leaves available to hide. So there will be very soon situation when there will be nowhere to hide. So I even don't know if they will continue this strategy.
They will be Sasha. They'll simply become easier and easier targets for the thousands of drones that the Ukrainians are going to be sending over their heads. So I just don't see it. Yeah.
Well, I think they're trying to get Ukrainian drones busy with these poor people, so they will not attack for us in Crimea and some other important targets.
And
but
you notice, you notice that Crimea is coming under increasing pressure.
Yeah.
Since they are, I don't know if the Ukrainian military is listening to us or is saying, hit the Crimea, hit it. This is
Exactly.
And Crimea has been hit every day, so of course they're hearing us.
This is the key word. Whatever Ukrainians are going to do from now on, it has to be every day without even Saturday and Sundays. Every day there has to be
no holidays for the Russians.
Even Moscow is now under threats, real threats. Moscow airports are being closed, and they have to redirect the incoming flights to Yaroslavl. And Yaroslavl is quite away from Moscow. I mean, it's a couple of hours, maybe more than a couple of hours trip by bus on horrible highways that Russia has, and it's not very pleasant way, especially for people flying in business class. It's quite an ordeal, but okay, that's a price to be paid. So the only negative thing for Ukraine, Auslander mentioned that Russians somehow became quite proficient in making drones. They cannot make missiles as much because they don't have the necessary parts and they don't have many other components. But drones, they are becoming extremely effective. And now there is a very seldom a day when less than 500 Russian drones penetrating Ukrainian space and inflicting damages. And he believes that very soon it's going to be 1,000 drones a day. He's talking about effective resisting these drones effective strategy. Obviously, it's not the missiles because you spend missile to take one drone. What about 999 drones? So you can do that.
That's just not cost effective. I mean,
No.
not at all. But what's interesting is that this is the Russian strategy of trying to use more and more drones. There's a historical parallel. Remember the Germans with the V1 and the V2. Yeah. They did not have reconnaissance or the ability to see where their targets were going. They didn't have any. They were firing blind. They just pointed those V1s and V2s in the general direction of England and hoped they hit something important. So
the achievement is that they were firing at England, not at Portugal. So that's already not so bad. But Jonathan, the thing is that so far there is no effective strategy of fighting not a drone but 1,000 drones. This is something, and this is what I believe United States will deliver to Ukraine very shortly. 33,000 drones, artificial intelligence that they could act on their own, but also they will be all interconnected among themselves. So that's an answer to $1,000 drones. If you put $5,000 intercept 5,000 drones interceptors. I don't know, maybe that's
and you basically would also have to attack what you can determine to be the source of the drone production. If there are centers where drones are being produced in quantity, if it's highly decentralized, if everybody everywhere is producing a drone on their own, then it would not be effective. But if there are drone production facilities that are trying to crank them out in large numbers, which is what you would need, and the Ukrainians manage to take those out, that will have an effect as well. And right now the Russians are not able to take out or reduce Ukrainian drone production. And what's also good is the more drones that they have, the more the Ukrainians will be able to economize on their use of men to defend the front lines. They can literally hide behind a wall of drones.
Actually, I have a video about drones for today, so we can watch it and maybe discover a little bit more of how Ukrainians are using drones.
Excellent.
So,
Perfect.
Let's go with it.
Let's roll.
Drones are destroying.
Whoops.
Oops.
Oops.
More time.
That's the sound you don't want to hear. You don't want to hear sound. You don't want to hear oops inside of a nuclear submarine either.
Want to see more footage of Ukrainian UAVs working effectively? Watch today's episode. Drones have become an integral part of military strategy due to their ability to provide surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeted strikes with a minimal risk to human life. They have already proven their effectiveness in direct combat against Russian UAVs. Moreover, drones are often used to attack high-value targets, such as command and control centers, air defense systems, and logistical infrastructure. Let's take a closer look at the attack on Russian fighter jets mentioned at the beginning. Operation Spiderweb resulted in about 40 strategic aircraft being hit. The damage is estimated at millions of dollars. Of course, operations of this scale are not carried out every day. Yet Ukrainian drone operators are constantly working to neutralize valuable enemy weapons and equipment. Here are a few examples. Here we can see a successful destruction of a Russian BK-16 landing craft, as well as the strike on Russian radar installations hidden inside protective domes atop Mount Ipetri in occupied Crimea. The operation was carried out by the elite primary unit of Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, which used naval drone carriers to deliver explosive-laden UAVs to the southern coastline of the Crimean Peninsula. And this is the result of a drone strike on the Afipsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai. The refinery plays a critical role in supplying diesel fuel to both the Russian economy and armed forces. Its estimated processing capacity is 6 to 7 million tons of crude oil annually. Another strike hit the Novokubishevsk refinery, a key processing plant in the Samara Group, resulting in its shutdown. Such strikes are strategically important as they help destabilize the enemy economically and logistically. The TOS-1A Sonsepiok is a Russian heavy flamethrower system designed to launch thermobaric munitions. The system has seen frequent use on various front lines in Ukraine, where Russian forces employ it to break through defensive lines and target Ukrainian troop concentrations. Ukraine's separate regiment of unmanned systems, Ryrog, successfully destroyed one of Russia's TOS-1A Sonsepiok systems using a combination of FPV and bomber drones. The combined strike set the vehicle ablaze, rendering it completely inoperable. The estimated cost of the destroyed system is $15 million. This time, a Ukrainian FPV drone destroyed a Russian BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher. The footage captured by an FPV drone shows the moment the Grad system was struck and disabled while driving. It's yet another example of how Ukrainian drone operators are increasingly targeting mobile high-value assets before they can reach firing positions. Additionally, 4 Russian armored vehicles were hit. One of them burned to the ground. This footage shows an operation carried out by operators of the 1st Separate Territorial Defense Brigade. The strike took place after Ukrainian forces identified that Russian troops had mined the bridge over the Sada River in Russia's Bryansk region, reportedly preparing it as a potential retreat route. Ukrainian forces responded by targeting and disabling the structure. Drone operators from Ukraine's 30th Separate Mechanized Brigade show their successful strikes against enemy targets. In particular, they managed to destroy a Russian RBU-6000 naval rocket launcher mounted on a truck chassis. The attack reportedly involved 2 high-precision FPV drone strikes. The first disabled the vehicle by targeting the cabin, while the second directly hit the RBU-6000 launcher, rendering it completely inoperable. The already mentioned primary unit has conducted another precision strike operation targeting Russian air defense systems in Donetsk Oblast, significantly degrading the radar and missile capabilities of Russian forces. According to the unit's report, the strike destroyed several high-value Russian military assets, including 3 Podlet radar stations, 2 Niobium SV radar systems, 2 S-300V missile launchers, and 1 P-18 early warning radar station. And here is an example of a successful nighttime drone strike. Wings of Omega unit destroyed a Russian Tu-S-19 MSTS self-propelled howitzer, a high-value artillery system worth an estimated $1.7 million. The strike took place while the Russian 152mm howitzer was exposed in open terrain. Drone operators from the Achilles unit successfully took out a Russian Panzer S-1 air defense system in Kharkiv Oblast. The Russian self-propelled anti-aircraft missile and gun system, valued at approximately $14 million, was struck during a high-precision drone operation deep behind enemy lines. This is a work of the Magyar Birds unit. They destroyed a Russian Strela 10 short-range surface-to-air missile system using FPV drones.
It's a pretty long video, but you've caught the main idea that a very cheap, not very cheap, but like several $1,000s cost drone easily destroys targets which are valued like $15 million in production. And what is more important, that Russia has limited possibilities to produce the new weapons. The Spiderweb operation, which we've seen in the beginning of this video, as a result led to destroying of several strategic bombers, Russian strategic bombers, which they inherited from the Soviet age actually, and they cannot produce them right now. So it's there. Of course, they cost. They have some value, like several $1 million each. But in terms of Russia, they are invaluable because they cannot produce them anymore. And that was done by small drones. Each of them is valued like several $1,000s at maximum.
That puts even more strain on an already weakened Russian war economy. And if you add up that, you throw in that factor, along with the other ways in which Ukraine is reducing Russia's ability to carry out an offensive, and this bodes very well for the future of the Russian-Ukrainian war. And and you mentioned earlier that Crimea has been getting attacked every day in various places, systematically weakening its defense system and setting it up for what I would project would be a final, at some point in the near future here, they're going to throw the decisive strike at the Kerch Bridge that will seal off logistical and reinforcements of Crimea. And that will be the big signal, the main prerequisite for the Ukrainian military to launch its counteroffensive to seal off Crimea and force the Russian occupiers to surrender. That will be the decisive victory.
It's funny you mentioned Russian economy. Russian economy is now, to put it simply, it's dying. There's no doubt about that. It's just simply dying. And so some people, some commentators were saying that, well, the only thing what could help Russian economy if somehow there would be a peace between Russia and Ukraine. So Russia would start conversion to a peaceful economy. And
they can't do that.
It's so-called conversion. Let's see if you're trying to convert, say, factories producing Kalashnikov into something that would produce, I don't know, meat grinders or some kind of use machinery for your kitchen. And what they noticed is that for the time being, they will try to work on it. It's not going to work successful because either they will not be able to produce this, or they will produce it, but they will not be able to sell it. So they're coming back to produce more Kalashnikovs because that predicts profitability, very steady profits for working people there. It's much more cost effective than producing meat grinders.
Yeah, war is their business, their only business. Contrast that with the United States war machine right after World War II. All those companies that were cranking out, those factories that were cranking out war material, they were able to successfully convert them into producing consumer goods. And all of a sudden, the American populace had all these wonderful consumer goods of things they'd never had before. Refrigerators, toasters, you name it. And all of a sudden, they had it in quantity, along with large quantities of food that were at full wartime production during World War II. Keep in mind, during World War II, the United States, U.S. farms, at one point, were able to produce enough food to feed half of the people in the entire world. It was producing that much food. Now, we still produce a significant amount of food. We certainly don't produce half of all the food in the world. But by the way, I would contend that we can do a better job with the resources and farmland we now have to up that percentage in the coming years. But still, right now, it's a big contrast that the flexibility, the total inflexibility of the Russian war economy compared with any other country, really. So they don't have the capacity to change or adjust to the changing situation or even to peacetime. So this is going to be a very, regardless of how, it's going to turn out even worse once the Russian military is forced to cease military operations in Ukraine and withdraw. Then the real pain is going to start for Russia.
Well, you remember a time of perestroika when it was a belief that the threat of war is no longer there, and the conversion started at that time. However, they could not produce a single product that would be in demand and it could be sold effectively in Russia or maybe even outside of Russia. So all the consumer boom of 90s, it was all products from United States, from Europe, even from China, but nothing was Russian produced at that time. And when this situation changed to what it is now, there are no products, anything from China, and Russians hate Chinese products because of it's junk on a big scale. But especially China produces a lot of viable products, but whatever they send to Russia, it's junk, 100%. Why they're doing that to their friend? I don't know.
Oh yeah, imagine how they treat their enemies.
But anyway, they're allies, and what we see is that now the axis which is forming with Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, it can be more powerful towards the Nazi Germany and their allies, because in terms of economic production and especially in electronics manufacturing, China is a very dangerous enemy in that possible World War III. And I really I've got another video which actually I wanted to show in the beginning, but then we started to discuss that drone issue, so I thought that the video about drones would be
we got distracted.
But since our program is named Russia, China, and Ukraine, I've got a nice video about what's going on in the world and where it may lead to. So I think that we can watch it right now, if you want,
Excellent.
Of course.
Sure.
Yes.
You please do. Yes.
In 1940, German bombs lit up the night sky behind me. Londoners huddled underground while fire rained from the sky. Entire streets vanished in smoke and in rubble. But through the flames, this cathedral stood. It was battered, it was scarred, but unbroken. A symbol of defiance. And this morning, 80 years later, 20 Russian drones loaded with explosives crossed into NATO's skies.
Poland and NATO scrambling fighter jets to shoot down those Russian drones. Poland, of course, a member of NATO, all nations defending each other.
It's the closest we've come to direct war with Russia since the Second World War.
At dawn, Soviet tanks move up on the suburb of Praga in their great September advance on Warsaw.
And as I look at St. Paul's, I can't shake the feeling that we've seen this before. But then it was Hitler, it was Mussolini, it was Hirohito. And today, it's Putin, it's Xi, and Kim Jong-un.
Standing on Tiananmen Gate, President Xi Jinping said his great nation now feared no one.
3 dictators smiling together in Beijing. Cameras flashing, jets streaming overhead. Missiles on parade. And it looks exactly like the 1940s. Except this time, there may be no allies to stand in their way. This is the Axis reborn. And while they march, and while they arm, and while they prepare for a decades-long confrontation, what do? We meet, we debate, we hesitate.
The European Union has again extended a ban on Ukrainian grain imports to...
President Karol Nawrocki decided on Monday to veto the amendment for aid.
As opposition to more Ukraine funding grows louder among some House Republicans.
Words without action and promises without consequences. History is screaming right at us. In 1939, Poland was carved up, once by Hitler, once by Stalin. Britain and France had pledged to defend it, but their promises came too late. Poland was crushed. Millions condemned to occupation, to camps and to gulags. That was appeasement. And appeasement does not stop dictators. It did not then, and it will not now. And yet, here we are again. Russia levels Ukrainian cities, Iran sends their drones, and North Korea sends its troops. China builds the largest navy on planet Earth. And the West defends whether defending ourselves is too escalatory. This is Chamberlain all over again, a permanent Munich.
Hitler's retreat at Berchtesgaden became the scene of conferences between Britain's Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and the Führer. Hitler now claimed additional territory.
The Second World War did not turn because of appeasement. It turned because of Stalingrad, where the Nazi advance was broken in the snow. And it turned above all on June 6th, 1944. D-Day, where Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy. That day, young men waded through surf and gunfire because leaders had finally found the courage to act.
To wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark and lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. Let us go forward together with our united strength.
And from that moment on, the Axis was doomed, not by words, not by speeches, but by action, by unity, and by sacrifice. That is what defeated the Axis. And now we stand at another crossroads. Ukraine is where the line is either held or it's broken. And if Ukraine holds, the new Axis is stopped. And if that line falls, Putin will not stop. Xi will not stop. Kim will not stop. And one day, the fire that consumed this skyline in 1940 could return. Look at St. Paul's behind me. Imagine it burning again. This is not the sprint to war. This is the slow motion beginning of World War III. And here is the terrifying difference. In the 1940s, there was an Axis. But there were also allies. Allies who fought back. Allies who stormed those beaches at D-Day. Allies who together defeated tyranny. And today there's an Axis again. But there are no allies. Not yet. Only hesitation and only excuses. This story is not finished, and it's still ours to write. It's still changeable, it's still fixable, but only if we choose to act. Because if we wait, if we look away, if we keep debating while dictators march, then this time there will be an Axis and no allies. History is watching, and it will not forgive appeasement twice.
That is very inspiring.
Yeah, there is something to think about it. See, the Europe, for example, Britain was attacked by Germans. It was a rather pure society at the time that rose to defend itself without looking of all kind of political considerations and so on. Because today, European countries, most of them, I'm talking about Western Europe, they all have to go through elections from time to time. So they have to appease their minority population, a Muslim part of it specifically. So they have to vote for things like recognize Palestine. How you can recognize something what doesn't exist? There is no such country like Palestine. There is nothing to recognize. It's a bunch of which Israel will disarm mercilessly and will control this territory in very short order. So in Europe, the only real countries that can defend against this horrible aggressors like Putin, Xi, and there is another idiot, North Korean. It can be only,
an idiot.
Yeah, something like that. Well, used to be friendly with Trump at one point, or maybe I think Trump wants to resume actually cordial relationship with him, but I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Why not? So what I'm talking about, the homogeneous real democracies like Ukraine, Poland, Baltic states, Scandinavian states, they can actually resist to the aggressors. And I wish they would form a new treaty. Forget about all the Western Europe and the states and all others. Do your treaty. Do something what existed when it was a union between Poland and Lithuanian conglomerate of nations, which Ukraine was part of it, believe it or not. Ukraine and a big part of Belarus, they were part of this union. And at that time, union was from Baltic Sea to Black Sea. It was much stronger empire than Russian, who were overrun by Mongols and who actually at that time switched to become Asian nation, while Ukraine remained in European. And at that time, it was far the strongest union in all Europe, including France, England, or whatever existed at that time. That was by far strongest. And interestingly, that they, I think, was it 14 and 10, it was the Battle of Grunwald, where Lithuania and Poland defeated the German army. And it was a devastating blow for Germans who couldn't get to that part of the world for several years, if not dozens of years. So this is almost becoming a great idea for now, when all these countries are being threatened by the same aggressor. So unite together and fight him. Whatever the planes crossing your border, shoot them without warning, without anything. Just shoot and see now Russians. Okay, Russians. Oh, we shoot your plane. Oh, you know what? Probably it was a mistake. Maybe even not. It's not us. It's probably France did it. Oh, you know what? I think it was United States. They did it. They didn't. Prove it.
What's interesting, Sasha, is you're pointing out that essentially in this axis that Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran are trying to form, the weakest link in this alliance is clearly Russia, because they are exhausting them. They are exhausting themselves. And as the commentator in that video pointed out, if Russia can be defeated in its war against Ukraine, the Axis can no longer act in a unified manner, because they do not have the power projection capability that the United States and, along with some of its other Western allies, have in combination to resist. And if Russia goes down and they are forced to spend years, if not decades, recovering from the devastation of that war, then that will be the greatest foundation for not only the stability of Ukraine, but for the stability of the Western alliance and being able to successfully resist or deter any future aggression by Russia, or for that matter, any of the other nations, because China is certainly not going to have any appetite for trying to act on its own against, say, Taiwan. If they see that all of a sudden, we're not, if we go against Taiwan, we're not going to get any help from Russia or North Korea, and certainly not Iran. So if this alliance, although it looks formidable on the surface, and Ivan, I would suggest that a very excellent study could be done comparing the economics of the Axis in World War II, what they had in terms of economic resources to be able to wage war, and compare that to what the supposed Axis between Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, what they would have available, and compare the two and see how formidable and what their weaknesses are. And they certainly do have weaknesses. And one of the ways, oddly enough, that their weakness could be significantly exploited is if the United States, for its part, is able to successfully construct or complete at least the beginnings of the Golden Dome, ballistic missile defense. And we've talked about how this could be improved to become a decisive element in the defense of the West. But I digress. The real key here is defeating Russia now while we still can.
And what helps a lot to achieve this goal is heroic Ukrainian 82nd Brigade. There are 2,000 men equipped with the latest ammunition and weapons from the NATO. They're all trained in NATO standard. They have English tanks, and the Challenger which are the best now equipped for fighting in Ukrainian territory, better than Abrams and Leopards and others. They have all that. They're very well trained, and they are by nature, they are fearless fighters. They are now entered the front against Russians. And so far, wherever they're doing and demonstrating their skills, Russians are not even fighting anymore. They run away when they hear about 82nd Brigade. Russians are running away, running very fast. They could probably establish few world and Olympic records how fast they run. Ivan, you've talked about that 82nd Brigade, yeah?
Yeah, it's legendary, and there are a lot of legendary brigades now, because coming back to what you said about a possible union between Ukraine, Poland, other Eastern European countries, and Baltic countries and Scandinavian countries. Now, in the whole Europe, Ukraine has, first of all, the most numerous army, and second, the most experienced army, which consists of a lot of brigades, a great number of veterans, different know-hows, and like drones, and not only in terms of some technical products, but also in terms of strategy and operations, how to initiate such unique operations like the spider web, or operations when Ukraine discovered a meeting of Russian top officers and top politicians in Faros and Crimea, which we were talking about, and precisely destroyed them in a restaurant, actually. So Ukraine is a really powerful ally for the European countries in future, and but in my own opinion, creating more unions maybe is a wrong way, rather than empowering and evolving that union, which was created to actually to protect the countries of the Western world from another great war with the Soviet Union and their allies. And that union is named NATO. NATO is existing, and NATO, I think that NATO should be actually reformed, and NATO should be more proactive in countersiding the Russian attempts to destabilize and to broke the unity of NATO members. And that's actually, of course, Ukraine will be able to create union with like Baltic states, Scandinavian states, and or countries of the Eastern Europe. But what's for if there is NATO, which was prepared for that war, but now upcoming war? But
75 years ago. Today, NATO is a different organization. They have different goals, not concerning with Ukraine, Poland, or other countries. So therefore, I'm not suggesting to get away from NATO. Poland can still remain part of NATO. There's no problem with that. But it has to be a new union of these countries withstand a Russian. Let's call the names. We are expanding our union to defend against Russian aggression. That's all there is to it. NATO is much more focused, many aims.
Yeah, the original stated purpose among some circles was about the purpose of NATO was to keep the Russians out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. Now it has changed, whereas now I predict that Ukraine will have the Ukrainian military and political leadership will have a very bright future following the victorious end of this war, and they will have a very bright future educating and training the militaries of other of its NATO allies, and I would predict also educating the United States military, because they have proven so far that they have a lot to teach the United States about how to wage war successfully in the 21st century.
Interestingly enough, that famous Institute of War Studies now recognize that all talk about Russia winning the war is just a matter of when and so on. This is all nonsense. It has no grounds at all that Ukraine is slowly taken over and ready to completely defeat Russian forces in Ukraine.
Yeah,
they can do it.
And by the way, Sasha, I would point out that the Institute for the Study of War, and I've seen its head, General Keane, usually on the Fox network. But the interesting thing is that the Institute, like many other Western military observers and analysts, they were all, shall we say, guilty of groupthink. They were all agreeing with each other. They were sort of buying into the conventional wisdom that, oh yeah, Russia has greater numbers. Russia has this, that. They'll eventually wear down Ukraine in a war of attrition. Unfortunately, they failed to take into account Ukrainian ingenuity and ability to sort of disrupt all their calculations. And now
also Russian stupidity.
Yeah, they were helped a great deal by Russian stupidity. Yes, that's great. Well, you recall what Einstein said, that Einstein once said, only two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not so sure about the universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. Well, gentlemen, I would like to thank you both for a very, very good program today. I'm looking forward in the near future. I want to hear more about achievements of 82nd Brigade, and I wish there will be 83rd and 84th and 85th Brigades, just as strong and well equipped as 82nd. And these brigades, you don't need many. 3-4 brigades can defeat all Russian army in Ukraine. That's my strong belief. And with that, I'm looking forward to see you on Friday, same place, same time. And Slava Ukraini.
God bless America. Yes.
And
thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. See you all on Friday. Bye-bye.